I sat on the couch, the phone still in my hand. The message glowed on the screen like a wound that wouldn't close. Outside, snow kept falling, soft and indifferent. Inside, everything I built for this moment began to crack. 10 years of service, 10 years of waiting to be welcomed home. Now a single text erased it all. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The memories came like waves, sharp and cold. I was 19 when everything changed. Dad lost his job at the factory. Mom started working nights at the pharmacy. Bills piled up, and the house felt smaller each day. I wanted to help, to make things right. College didn't feel possible anymore. The military office was across the street from campus. A poster said, "Earn respect, serve with pride." I walked in before I could change my mind. The recruiter smiled when he saw my grades. "You'll do well," he said. "Discipline is in your eyes." 4 days later, I stood in our kitchen with enlistment papers. Dad didn't look up from his beer. "A soldier, that's ridiculous," he said. Mom bit her lip but said nothing. I signed anyway. I shipped out a week later, clutching silence instead of blessings. Training was brutal, but I loved the order of it. Every rule, every march, every sleepless night made sense. I learned to fire, to fight, to endure. The world outside, the uniform disappeared. The Marines became my family when mine refused to. I wrote letters home, sent photos, waited for replies. Most came back unanswered. Still, I sent money every month. $200 at first, then $5, then $8. New roof, dental bills, car repairs, always something urgent. They never said thank you, but I kept giving. It felt like the only way to stay connected. Once, after a long deployment, I visited home. Dad barely looked up when I entered. "So," he said, staring at the TV, "that's supposed to impress me." I told him about my promotion. He grunted, took another sip, changed the channel. I slept in my old room that night, surrounded by trophies he never dusted. I thought I could earn his pride if I just tried harder. So I worked harder, longer, until medals covered my wall. But his silence grew heavier than any battlefield I'd faced. Now, years later, his message was the final dismissal. "Don't come home this year." No reason, no kindness, just rejection dressed as protection. I stared at the blinking cursor beside his words. I wanted to ask why, but the question felt too small. Maybe this was who we always were, together by blood, divided by choice. I set the phone down and stared at the wrapped gifts. They looked foolish now, glittering with hope I no longer believed in. The quiet stretched until I could hear my heartbeat. I whispered to the dark room, "Never again." And for the first time, I meant it. Morning came gray and silent. I hadn't slept. The message still echoed in my head like static. I made coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake up. If they didn't want me home, there had to be a reason. Not just distance, something deeper, something ugly. I turned to my filing cabinet, the one I kept from my service days. Folders lined up in perfect order. I pulled them out, spreading papers across the floor. Pay stubs, transfer receipts, letters from my parents. Each one told a story of loyalty that no one returned. I opened the first folder, bank statements. Every month a transfer. $200 at first. Then $5. Then $8. 10 years of deposits, highlighted in yellow. The numbers added up fast. More than $80,000. I stared at the total, feeling something twist in my chest. That was my first house, my first real chance at life, gone in silence. All for a family that couldn't even answer a text. I moved to another stack of papers, loan documents. One caught my eye. North Valley Credit Union. 6 years ago. My father's handwriting in the margins. My signature at the bottom. I remembered that day like it was happening again. He said the roof needed repairs. The bank wanted a cosigner. He smiled for the first time in years when I agreed. I thought I was helping. He never told me I wasn't just a co-signer. He made me the primary borrower. The house, my childhood home, was legally half mine. 51%, my name first on every page. My throat went dry. They used my credit, my trust, and my silence. I felt the world tilt. I picked up the phone and called the bank. After a few transfers, a woman confirmed it. Yes, Ms. Porter, your name appears as the primary owner. Her tone was polite, neutral. Mine was. Thank you, I said, then hung up. The room spun with a new kind of clarity. I wasn't just unwanted. I'd been erased and replaced. I needed more proof. Emails, messages, anything. I opened my laptop and typed family into the search bar. Hundreds of threads popped up. Requests for help, never gratitude. Truck repairs, dental bills, tuition for my brother. I made a spreadsheet. Each line another withdrawal from my faith. The total glared at me in bold numbers. $82,615. I leaned back, laughing once, sharp and humorless. So that was love in my family. Transactional, invisible, one-sided. I scrolled down to a message from my father, dated years ago. Need you to sign something quick. Don't overthink it. My stomach churned. I looked around the apartment, clean and small but mine. They took everything I gave, but never saw me. The silence around me thickened. For the first time, it didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space to breathe. I whispered to the cold air, "You taught me loyalty. Now I'll teach you consequence." I spent the next hour searching for answers. The numbers didn't lie, but I needed voices to confirm them. I called every contact I still had from home. Most didn't answer. Some hung up when they heard my name. Finally, one familiar voice came through. Minh An, oh my, it's been years, said Mrs. Vance, our old neighbor. Her tone carried warmth, then hesitation. I forced a smile she couldn't see. Hi, Mrs. Vance. I just wanted to ask about my parents. How are they doing? Oh, they've been busy, she said softly. Lots of construction this year. Construction. My pulse quickened. What kind of construction? Oh, new siding, kitchen remodel, and a big patio last fall. Looks lovely now. The air around me froze. All that work while I lived on second-hand furniture. I swallowed hard. Do they ever talk about me? A long pause followed. Well, dear, not much lately. Some people didn't even know they had a daughter in the military. Her words hit harder than any battlefield memory. They keep your photos in the study, though, she added quickly. As if that helped. Have you seen anyone else around the house? I asked. Oh, yes, young college kids coming and going. Your father said they were tutors for your brother. My brother hadn't been in school for years. I thanked her and hung up. The line went dead, leaving only the hum of betrayal. I turned toward the window, watching the city blur in the snow. They'd turned my home into a business. Students renting my childhood room. Money flowing through a house half mine. And they told me not to come home. I opened my laptop again, fingers shaking but steady in purpose. I typed Veteran Legal Assistance Center into the search bar. The first result read, free consultations for former service members. I dialed the number before fear could catch up. Veterans Legal Aid, this is Carla speaking. My name is Minh An, I said. I'm a former Marine. I need help with a property issue. She asked a few questions. Her voice was calm, practical, human. By the end of the call, I had an appointment for the next morning. When I hung up, I sat still for a long time. The anger in my chest began to shift. It wasn't fire anymore. It was focus. I gathered every document, every email, every receipt. I labeled folders like I'd labeled supply crates overseas. Family, loans, transfers. Evidence of everything I had given and everything they took. The Christmas tree lights blinked behind me. I didn't turn them off. Let them burn. Let them remind me what loyalty should look like. The gifts for my parents still sat on the table. I reached for one, then stopped. Not yet. Tomorrow, I would stop being the daughter they used. Tomorrow, I would start being the woman they couldn't ignore. I whispered to the empty room, if they erased me, I'll write myself back. Then I began to plan. The next morning came cold and bright. I wore my old service coat, the one that still fit like armor. The legal aid office was small but organized, just like a command post. A woman named Carla greeted me with a firm handshake. Beside her sat a real estate attorney named Megan. They listened as I laid out every document. Each page told the same story: trust weaponized, love used as leverage. Megan studied the mortgage papers with sharp eyes. You're the majority owner, she said. 51%, that's not a cosigner. I nodded, already knowing it but still needing to hear it. Carla leaned forward. You can take legal possession, or you can reclaim your share through court. My voice came out steady. I just want the truth on paper. Megan smiled faintly. Then we start today. We spent hours cataloging evidence, dates, and bank transfers. Every number became a bullet point in a personal war. By noon, I had a file thicker than any service record. Megan drafted a property verification request. It would grant me full access to inspect the house. Once this is filed, she said, you can walk in as an owner, not a guest. The words hit deep. Owner, not guest. That night, I packed a small bag, camera, notebook, recorder. Old habits of documentation came naturally. I slept little, mind locked in tactical planning. The next day, the property manager met me at the address. He was a tall man named Daniel, nervous but polite. Are you sure you want to do this? He asked. I looked at the door I hadn't walked through in a decade. Yes, I said, more sure than I've ever been. He turned the key. The familiar scent of cinnamon candles and smoke drifted out. But beneath it was something new: cheap cologne, takeout food, unfamiliar life. The living room looked the same at first glance. Then I saw the details. A game controller on the floor. A backpack by the sofa. Not my parents' things. We moved down the hallway. I opened the first bedroom door and froze. It was mine once. Now it belonged to a stranger. Walls covered in posters, empty cans on the desk. Daniel took photos quietly, documenting every sign of occupancy. The next room was worse. Makeup scattered across the dresser. Laundry piled on the bed. 2 tenants, maybe more. He found the rental agreements in a kitchen drawer. Each signed by my father. Monthly rent, $600 per room. 18 months of steady income. No taxes reported. No permission from me. Daniel shook his head. They've been making good money off this place. I said nothing, just kept taking pictures. The photo wall in the hallway stopped me next. All my military photos were gone. Not one trace of who I was. Just landscapes and smiling faces without me. I stood there, silent, steady, unbroken. For the first time, I saw it clearly. This wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. I turned to Daniel. Take one more picture, I said. This time, make sure I'm in it. January 5th arrived with a biting wind. The sky was pale, the kind that promised no comfort. I parked in front of the house that used to be mine. My lawyer, Megan, stood beside me holding a folder of documents. Behind her, Daniel waited with his clipboard. The locksmith sat in his van, engine humming. You're not doing anything wrong, Megan said quietly. I nodded once. I know. We walked up the icy steps together. Before I could knock, the door flew open. My father stood there, red-faced, already shouting. What the hell is this? You think you can barge in here? I stopped 3 feet away, my posture straight, measured. We need to talk, I said. He laughed, short and sharp. Talk after what you've done. My mother appeared behind him, her hands trembling. And please, what's happening? I'm here about the house, I said. My brother came down the hallway, holding a beer, half awake. Megan stepped forward, calm and precise. Sir, by law, this property is 51% owned by Ms. N. My father's smile vanished. That's nonsense, he growled. This is my house. Actually, Megan replied, records show otherwise. He took a step closer, towering, trying to intimidate me like he used to. You think you're tough because you wore a uniform. You're still my kid. Not today, I said softly. Today I'm the owner. The room behind him smelled of smoke and guilt. He refused to move, so I said louder, we can talk here or outside, your choice. Mom tugged at his sleeve. Lloyd, please let them in. He glared but stepped aside. The house felt smaller than I remembered. Christmas decorations still hung in the corner, brittle and dusty. I placed a folder on the coffee table. These are copies of the payments I made when you stopped paying the mortgage. Mom looked down, silent. We've been struggling, she whispered. While you renovated the kitchen, I asked, with my money. My father slammed his fist against the table. Watch your tone. I didn't flinch. Watch your lies. Megan placed photos on the table. 2 rented rooms, 2 tenants. Illegal subletting, she said. Undeclared income. My brother's face turned pale. We can explain. Don't, I said. You've all said enough. Dad's voice broke into a shout. You were never supposed to come back. So I was good enough to sign the loan, I said, but not good enough to exist. Mom began to cry, soft and helpless. Family should forgive, she said. Family should protect, I answered. You did neither. Megan handed my father a document. You have 30 days to either sign a lease or vacate. He stared at it, trembling with rage. You can't do this to us. I already did, I said. I turned for the door, ignoring the noise behind me. Outside, the wind cut through my coat but felt clean. For the first time, I wasn't running from them. I was walking away on my own terms. Freedom didn't roar. It whispered, and I heard it clearly. A month later, the house stood empty. The yard was buried in frost, quiet as a confession. I unlocked the door and stepped inside alone. The air was still, heavy with what used to be. Every room echoed with the ghosts of arguments and silence. They'd taken everything except the damage. A cracked mirror in the bathroom. Holes in the wall where fists once spoke. Scratches on the door of my old room. I walked through slowly, touching nothing. The pain was there, but it no longer ruled me. In the closet, I found a dusty box pushed behind old blankets. Inside were fragments of a forgotten pride. My valedictorian medal. Newspaper clippings about scholarships. A photo of me in uniform, eyes steady, unbroken. They had hidden these pieces like secrets too heavy to show. I sat on the floor and held the photo. For the first time, I didn't cry. I smiled, small and sure. They tried to erase me, but even their shame couldn't destroy proof. I set the box on the kitchen counter, beside my notebook. Plans filled the pages, sketches, names, budgets. A new purpose had taken shape. This house would not stay empty. It would breathe again. I called it Haven House. A refuge for women veterans with nowhere else to go. 4 bedrooms, shared kitchen, garden in the back. Not just shelter, but a second chance. I called 3 friends from my unit, Mara, Joe, and Tess. They arrived with paint, brushes, and laughter. The silence broke like glass. We opened the windows, let winter air rush in. The walls were pale blue, chipped and tired. We painted them ivory, layer by layer. Each stroke erased something old, something bitter. Tess found a box of stones in my closet. Each one labeled in my childhood handwriting. Grand Canyon, 1999. Lake Powell, 2001. I thought they'd thrown those away. Families keep the pieces they want, Mara said softly. Then we'll keep the ones that matter, I answered. By sunset, one room gleamed with new paint and light. It didn't smell like sorrow anymore. It smelled like work, like possibility. Who gets this room? Joe asked. Rachel, I said. Marine Corps 2 tour, sleeping in her car. We all went quiet. Then Tess nodded. She'll like it here. We stood together, looking at what we'd built. The house felt alive again, steady under our feet. Outside, snow began to melt, revealing the dark soil beneath. I knew spring would come soon. Not just for the garden, but for us. I opened the window wide, letting the wind sweep through. Light spilled across the floor, touching everything new. This was no longer my parents' house. It was mine. It was ours. Home, finally, by choice and not by blood. And in the quiet that followed, I felt peace settle like sunlight. The next morning, sunlight filled every corner of the house. The walls glowed warm, like they'd forgiven the past. I brewed coffee in the quiet kitchen and watched steam rise. Outside, the garden waited beneath a thin layer of frost. Soon, green would break through again. I walked to the living room and looked around. Paint cans lined the floor, brushes drying by the sink. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. I could hear laughter from the women upstairs, soft and alive. For the first time in years, the sound felt like home. The air didn't carry blame anymore. It carried purpose. My phone buzzed on the counter, another message from my mother. I didn't open it. Not out of anger, but peace. Some doors close so better ones can open. I stepped outside, the cold air clean and sharp. The flag above the porch fluttered in the wind. Not a symbol of war anymore, but of rebuilding. I whispered to the quiet street, "This is what home feels like." Then I turned toward the morning light and walked forward.